to understand the inevitability of strangeness. This is going to be part of your world no matter what. You can't get away from it.
But you have to put it in its proper place.
That's right. It has to be in its proper place, which is on the fringe, that's what all the language, it's already that, like the fringe, the margin, the exception, like the water on the edge of the world, right? The fluidity that exists on the edge of reality. So I like to help people understand, let's say you think about a traditional church.
Yeah.
A traditional church is built exactly like this. Like a Gothic church, for example, is a good way to say it. So at the center, we have the altar. It's the highest place. It's the place where the heaven and earth meet, right? The priest lifts up the chalice and he shows you like heaven and earth is meeting right here. This is the spot where being is manifesting itself in its fullness. And then we have the people that are there, and there's multiplicity and there's all this stuff. And then in the corners and in the edges and on the outside, that's where we have gargoyles. And gargoyles are fine, right, in their proper place. And that's what they are. They're ambiguous, they're humorous, they're confused, they're a strange mixture of different identities. They have their place in the structure, but only if they're in their proper place. If you take a gargoyle and you put it on the altar, like you're in trouble. And I think that this is what's going on, is that exceptions will always exist. So there's a sense in which the argument of let's say the LGBT argument to say that there's some fluidity is true, but the fluidity is on the edges. It's always in the exceptions and on the edges and in strangeness. But you can't make strangeness the thing that you worship, because then everything falls apart. And if we try to eliminate fluidity, if we try to eliminate exceptions and strangeness, then it'll come back with a vengeance. So in the Bible, you have this image, for example, of the field. And the Israelites were supposed to till their field, but leave the corners untilled. So you're supposed to leave the corners untilled for the stranger and the poor and the stranger. So the sense in which the world can't be completely filled. You have to leave a remainder on the edge. And the idea of having a fringe on your vestment, for example, is a good example. So it's like you have the hem of your vestment stops, then you leave a little bit of wild on the edge. That's something that has always existed in all societies. So I'm not trying to justify morally this or that behavior, but there's a manner in which traditional societies would always recognize that exceptions happen.
And now the fringes are at the center of society. And
that's right.
People who frequently, I hate to be offensive, they frequently look like gargoyles, are at the center of society. And I also can't help but notice that the people who mutilate themselves in these ways, and who, it's not merely that a man is dressing up like Donna Reed, okay? It's usually a man mutilating himself in ways that often seem to have very little to do with sex, or that are extraordinary caricatures of what a woman is, or very frequently that involve occult symbolism. I mean, overtly occult symbolism here. And if you put that sort of ugliness, if you make yourself uglier than you otherwise would be, and you put that ugliness at the center of a society, my question that I struggle with is, why don't we all just reject it out of hand and say, yuck, between a beautiful artistic environment and this cult of ugliness, give me the beauty.
Yeah.
Why are we still being drawn into this?
One of the things we're seeing, and this is difficult, is that we're kind of seeing religion pour back into the world. And this is happening in very strange ways. Anybody who followed the George Floyd protest will have noticed to what extent those were religious in tone, the processions, the people flocking themselves, like kneeling and doing all these things.